Welcome to Beyond the O.R. with Dr. Kevin Brenner. I'm a board-certified plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. I want to take you beyond my world of plastic surgery, diving deep into exciting hot topics and delving even deeper into compelling characters that I've met along the way. We'll be talking with attorneys, actors, comedy writers, Navy SEALs, and many other fascinating and inspiring people with truly intriguing stories to share. So let's jump right in. Welcome back to Beyond the O.R. Today I'm really excited to have with us Mr. Johnnie Raines,
Yay!
Producer, casting director, executive, longtime friend of mine, most importantly. And today we're going to learn all about his origin story. And you probably know Johnnie, not by name, but from behind the scenes, because he's worked on so many shows that you are just household names, like The Bachelor and Bachelorette and Super Nanny.
Wife Swap.
And Wife Swap. We're
This goes on.
We're going to learn all about it. So,
Yes.
Johnnie.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Welcome, Johnnie.
Great to be here.
Yay!
Oh my God. I love seeing you. Every time I see you, it's like it brings back my childhood.
Oh,
so for everyone listening and watching, I've known you since I was in grammar school.
Yeah,
right.
we were pretty young.
So Johnnie has
10 years ago.
Right.
Yes. 10 years.
Yes.
So Johnnie is friends with my brother.
Yes, one of my dearest friends.
And what year do you? I forget when it was. When did you guys meet?
So your brother Greg and I first met in high school. Pretty much my first day at Beverly Hills High School.
Okay,
Yes.
so it was when I was in junior high.
Yeah.
Okay.
10 years ago, as you said.
Yes, 10 years ago.
And before we even finish that thought, the first backlash I'm going to get is from my brother. As soon as he sees you and hears you sitting here,
Yes.
he's I don't know if he'll call you before calling me.
Like, why are you hanging out with my friends?
Like, you haven't had me on your show.
Oh, well.
You had Johnnie on this
Yeah,
show.
well, you know, I mean,
Hey,
I can
priorities.
understand why.
And family.
No, your brother will be a great guest because your brother is, I mean, he's so funny. He's one of the funniest people that I know, and I see so much resemblance between the two of you.
But not as funny as me.
Well,
I say that to him all the
you
time.
both have definitely the
Dry humor.
Yeah, I was gonna say the comedian gene, which I think you get from your mother, who was also kind of like a big personality.
Johnnie knew my mom.
Of course, I knew your
that's
mom.
amazing.
I mean,
Wow.
he was like around the house on the
Yeah.
weekends and along with Keith and David and
Yes.
like the Rat Pack. That was like my brother. You guys were my brother's Rat Pack.
Yeah.
And I was always so jealous of your relationship, the four of you, and you're all still friends
Yes,
today.
absolutely.
Which you know.
And that's why he had you instead of his brother, because he was jealous.
So now we have our own thing, right? Over the as we become adults, and you know, so yes.
And I'm sure Keith and David want no part of this.
Well, you know, they may be knocking on your door to get on the show next.
Doubtful. So I was jealous of that, and in fact, last night it was oddly enough, I was at an event. So my younger daughter is starting a new school, so they had like a new parents event.
Right.
And as Danny and I walked in, the first person I see is my friend Jason from grammar school. I went to
Amazing.
Beverly Vista with
Yeah.
him.
That's great about
And he's a big time manager,
Yeah.
was an agent, and I haven't seen him in years.
LA is a small town.
Now our kids are gonna be in the same class,
Yeah.
which is, and I'm like, oh my God,
Brings
I'm
you
having
back.
Johnnie. I was like,
Yeah.
it's like my parallel, but like I don't have what Greg has with you guys. Like I just don't have that because I moved around so much.
Right.
So
It's rare. It is definitely rare.
That's so beautiful, though, because I think when you have those longtime friends, there's a bond there. It's a family,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
and especially in LA, everybody's so transient, you know. So you guys are unicorns, really. Like my husband is a native.
He grew up here too.
Yeah, he
right?
did, in the Valley.
Okay.
So you guys are unicorns, and the fact that everybody's still kind of around is amazing.
Yeah, I feel like Los Angeles, I know what you mean by saying it has this transient nature, but it is in a lot of ways to me like a very small town.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because we grew up here and like your husband grew up here, so he might have a similar feeling about it, where you can't go anywhere without bumping into somebody they went to grammar school with or high school with, just like you did last night.
Right,
You know,
right.
so it does happen often when you're here in LA, which is odd because there are millions of people that live here.
That's true, but I feel like all of us who grew up here,
Yeah.
right? You started in Beverly Hills School District in high school, or were you
High school, but I went to I went to school in LA, like at Carthay Center
right.
before. So I mean, I was born in Los Angeles.
But I feel like there's so many people from like when we were growing up who went into entertainment. Like,
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They either left permanently and never looked
Right.
back, or they're like
Yeah.
everyone's in entertainment.
And I think it's like if we lived in Indiana or Iowa, we would be going into the agriculture business. But we don't live there. We live here. So Hollywood is like, you know, what else are you gonna do?
That's true. I was pretty close. I was in Wisconsin and Chicago. It's not that far. You know, it's a stone's throw from Indiana.
I'm
and Iowa.
saying, right, had you stayed, you might be working on a corn farm. Instead of in Beverly Hills as like this fancy plastic surgeon.
There was like a huge need for plastic surgery on the corn farm.
I mean, Cindy Crawford was discovered on a cornfield in the Midwest.
Wow.
You're a wealth of information.
Not just a pretty face.
All right. So, how did you come from being Johnny that I knew in my house to getting into entertainment? Like, what was that transition?
It was definitely not a straight line, I will tell you that. And so, you know, growing up in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills at that particular time, as teenagers, that's when things really became crazy. So it was a fast existence in those years. So by the time I went to college, I was kind of like already ready to downshift a little bit because high school had been so racy. And so once I got into college at USC, that's where options aside from just being like cool and partying and living large, like I saw all these other options like getting a job and studying and just things that had never been part of my experience at all ever.
Pre-med? No
Just
inkling?
even like going to the library, like things that just were not part of.
Never went to the library at Beverly, huh?
Not to study.
I love it.
So to make a long story short, once I got to USC, that's when I started really thinking about a career. So I was a journalism major at USC, and that is really where I started to build this foundation of how to tell stories and how to spell and things like that, and grammar and all of it. Yeah.
The basics, the things you didn't learn in Beverly Hills.
Right. Imagine. So that's where those building blocks came into play. And like our experience growing up in LA, our roots to Los Angeles were very strong, or still are strong. That's kind of what we started the conversation with. So going to a local school, which USC is, still I had all the relationships with people from high school and even further back. So I was kind of like a commuter student. So I would drive to class and go back to my regular life. So by junior year, I was ready to experience something else. So I decided to go to do a junior year abroad. That's the University of Kent.
Which is the second thing I'm jealous of, because I always wanted to do an abroad year. It just wasn't in the cards
But
on my track.
you studied outside of LA. You were in Chicago,
I
right?
was in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
For college, and then Chicago for med school.
Right, I remember that you were in Chicago for med school.
I'm jealous of all my friends who got to go abroad or chose to go abroad.
But
I could have. I could have.
Yeah, that experience that you had living in Wisconsin, living in Illinois, that's similar, I think.
It's similar to UK.
When you come from here, like it's everywhere is different than Los Angeles, because LA is like, I mean, what I learned, by the way, when I went to school in England was that LA is not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Which you grow up
Right?
thinking here. Like you think like
Yes.
this is it. There's no
Like
place.
But there is a bubble.
The Oscars is
Totally.
the only thing
Right.
that you have to look
like
forward to every
Oscar
year.
season is actually a holiday
Yeah.
here. But it's not like that in other places.
Anywhere else.
No, it's just here.
Maybe Manhattan.
But we do live in a bubble in
Totally.
LA. You know, I even though I think we live in a bubble, what I love about Los Angeles is that, don't you feel like, even though, you know, there's people are fake, or I find that everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's this thing of everybody trying to better themselves on a spiritual kind of level, or, figuring out what their path
Yeah.
is. And so there is this always working on yourself thing that I think is really cool in LA.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
it
agree.
really is. So what did you study when you went to
University of Kent.
Yes.
In Canterbury.
Yes.
So I studied.
I'm surprised you didn't come back with an accent.
This was before Madonna had that.
And an ask off.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, when I came back, it was devastating because I loved it so much. And to finish college here at USC, which is because it was my junior year, it was really quite disappointing and depressing and all that. But what I studied there was philosophy, particularly European philosophy. And it was also poetry, British poetry. It was kind of a divergence from the journalism program at USC, which is still, and at the time was very professionally driven. This year abroad was like, a year out of time. So philosophy, British poetry. But the most incredible part of that year was this experience of like realization that there's more to life than what, I grew up with. And the friendships that I made there also became long-term friendships whom I'm still connected with, and been through weddings and divorces and godfather to some kids over there. So but it's such a unique experience because it was at a very small university on a little hill, like in a 13th century town, where there were a lot of international students from all over the world, but our world was the university. There was no like Hollywood Boulevard or, whatever that we have here, none of that. So
Were you embarrassed to tell people you were from Beverly Hills?
no, I was like as loud as you could imagine about it. And people were like, so what?
yeah.
Right.
Like nobody even cared.
But that's even better.
Totally.
I think
got-
that's.
in Wisconsin. I got so many sneers. We'd have like, I mean, it's a huge.
Why did you go around telling everybody you were from Beverly Hills?
Oh,
Hello, I would be looking at who cares.
It's a huge university, so like all the 100 level like intro courses, there's like 500 people in a class, but then they'd have like these little TA sessions where there's like 15 students,
Right.
And so the first class, every time they're like, okay, everyone go around and tell us your name and where you're from. You're like, hey, I'm Steve from Waukesha. Right. Hi, I'm Bob from Kenosha. I'm Susie from Green Bay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Kevin from Beverly Hills. Like, it was like the air got sucked out of the room and
Right.
everyone.
Right.
Yeah, like who's this guy?
Yeah. But you have you're so handsome and have
Oh
such.
my God.
Oh, please don't do
charisma.
that, Johnny.
here we
It's
go.
true. I wanted to
Here we
put
go.
you on television, like when you were in medical school. I was like trying to cultivate you,
You did.
to be on
Did.
television.
That was my first
I remember.
foray into
Yes.
reality TV, right?
Yes. So I'm
So,
sure.
so Johnny tried. What are you going to tell me?
Well,
so
I was
Johnny
just gonna
tried
say-
he tried to suck me into The Bachelor.
I mean, suck might be the wrong word.
Yes.
But
Recruit.
lure perhaps might be better. Cast me to be the
Okay,
Bachelor.
so Johnny was a casting.
Pick your
director.
words. Oh my
Johnny
God.
was a Johnny was a casting director, and
Yes. For
and
many
I don't.
years.
You just called me out of the blue and was like, "You need to audition for The Bachelor." I'm like,
Yes.
"No, I don't." I would think I was.
You might have
doing
been a
my-
resident.
I was doing my plastic surgery residency.
Right.
So I was
Out.
in the LA nether regions,
Right.
close by, down in Irvine, and
Yes.
I was like, "What?" And then I'll never forget. So your office at the time was at the Sherman Oaks Gallery,
Right.
right?
Like totally.
And like, oh my God, gag me with a spoon. So you're like, but you have to come like screen test, right?
Yes.
Isn't that what we did?
It's an audition, yeah.
Right.
Put you on tape.
I'm just a caveman. I don't know these things. It's not my world.
Imagine how easy my job is.
Right. Yeah.
So I remember coming up to the office, and I'm sitting there, and whoever your assistant was up front hands me like a clipboard with like 40 pages of releases. I was like, what? And I'm reading through this, and we have to contact your family, and we have to contact all your former girlfriends, and all, and I was
contact your former girlfriends. He was like, I'm out.
I mean, yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, it still is. I think it's shocking, but it's still on television. And the casting process for that show, for that role in particular, is quite layered.
Yeah, so this is, I want to get into like really like, let's dig deep into your career and philosophy. I would assume that philosophy and journalism really helped you with casting, with producing. You are an executive now, right?
Yes.
So how did that degree, even though you're not doing philosophy and journalism, you kind of are in storytelling. So how did that help you in the career that the path that you're now on?
I think the things that I studied and that I really focused in on in college, like journalism and philosophy, helped me become like I was saying earlier, the skills of studying were skills that I developed later in life. In college, right? So just the act of it, the practice of it, gave me a discipline, which definitely has helped in the professional world that I've moved within. Journalism, the foundation of journalism, people may argue with me now because pretty much anybody can be a journalist if they have like a social media profile.
Right.
But in the earlier days, it required that you understood the who, what, where, when, and how of a story.
Right.
So those 5 components, they
translate.
They translate to everything. And in video, using video or digital images, you just are building upon that who, what, when, where, why. So who, what, when, where, and why.
Why.
Yeah.
You got 'em.
So thank you. So those principles are really drilled into your head. Also, something that I learned, like probably this would have been my first journalism 101 class, something called agenda setting, which the media does by, dictating kind of what the news of the day is, and it's almost like setting the trend of thought amongst pop culture.
Right.
So that's also been a big part
Big help.
The work that I've done has been about like you brought up The Bachelor. I mean, The Bachelor, being part of The Bachelor for the first 10 seasons of it, definitely set the agenda for our pop culture because it's still present now.
Well, and it's the first show ever done like that. Like now you have all these other shows that really, branched off from The Bachelor.
100%.
Yeah, so you were like on the cutting edge, you probably didn't even realize that. How many seasons are they into it now?
Like 21.
That's insane. That's insane.
Thank you for not trying to recruit me for Celebrity Wife Swap.
Oh, right. That was another, but that was a great idea. So I did work on Celebrity Wife Swap, but I also worked on Civilian Wife Swap. And
either one.
But Civilian to me was far more interesting because it was like this social experiment.
Yeah, social experiment.
Because we had, families on opposite ends of a spectrum living together.
Admittedly, I watched some of those.
Some of the episodes were incredible.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about working in reality, especially in those early days of reality, beginning of the 2000s, the aughts, the early aughts, like they call it, was that there was this social component to it and this experimental thing, like putting people in these bizarre environments, whether it's, a house with, 24 other girls all dating the same guy, or suddenly having
Sounds
this like
awful.
For who? The girl or the guy? Girls or the guy?
Yeah. I never could have done that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
I never. No, my makeup could not have tolerated that.
Well, that's why you didn't get it, probably.
and he also was not that. Like, you have to be to be a reality candidate, you have to be open, and you have to, in my opinion, like, again, I've hung up my casting crown, and I'm doing, other work now, but in those years, one of the things that I found that makes a great reality star is somebody who processes their thinking outside their head. So if
But they want that for game shows
Talking out
too.
loud.
They want you, as you're going through game shows and you're processing that, they want you to go, okay, well, that was spelled with, they want you to process out loud.
Yes, yes.
And that kind of brings the audience in.
Yeah,
with you.
totally.
So what are the things that you're doing now? So you were casting, you've had so many, as I was researching, I was like, wow, you have casted so many things. You have worked on so many things. What are you like now? You were former casting director, producer, and executive. So
And podcast producer, right? Because
I mean, that's one of the types of content.
You recruited me. Okay.
I didn't suck you in.
You recruited me to one of the podcasts that you were producing with Laura Wasser, which was the very first. It was right before COVID hit, I believe.
Yes,
right?
literally, I think it was March 1st or something.
Like weeks before.
Yeah.
And that was the very first podcast that I did, and I remember.
Wow.
I remember doing it because.
And look at you now.
It was me and you and Laura, and we were talking.
Right.
And I was like, this is fun. Like I had, like the hour just flew by, right?
Yes.
And then, so that was my first exposure to, it had never even occurred to me to go on a podcast, let alone have a podcast. And then this one sucked me into this podcast.
It's a great thing to do because of the conversational component of it. Also, I think at that particular podcast that you were a guest on, we were really focusing on this niche audience, which is, interested in
divorcees having surgery,
which is an audience, as you know. I mean, it's
it is. No, I know.
Plastic surgeon. So I'm sure, like, we talked about the divorce makeover. We talked about refreshing your body and your parts of your body after a divorce, and I think. To answer your earlier question, so when in like 2015, 16, when streaming services really became present and almost omnipresent,
right?
I realized that obviously, broadcast television was changing and cable television was changing, and I've always had a seeking mind and been interested in expansion and doing different things. Kind of to your point about maybe that's like the LA DNA. Is that we're, have this desire to aspire to something new and greater and bigger, and, so
creatively also always.
100%. And so that's what then made me start to look for things outside of television. So the project that you're talking about, I it ended up creating a new company. So I had On TV Inc., under which I did casting and producing of traditional content. And then I created a new company called Real Brand Inc., which was all about digital marketing and digital content production, podcasts, new media, stuff online, that sort of thing. And one of the big projects that I had was launching an app with this incredibly famous divorce attorney, another longtime friend, Laura Wasser, who is like the A-list divorce attorney for any A-lister that you can think of, from Kim Kardashian, Angelina Jolie, to Dr. Dre. I mean, she does them all. So she has this very high level, high end practice. But her philosophy is very accessible and relatable, and it's all about amicability. So we took her philosophy, we created an app that, people who are not on the A list, but even if you're on the Z list, you could afford to get divorced on an app, online, on your phone.
Wow.
It's over quick or something?
It's over easy.
It's over easy. There you go. Great
That's
name. Double
brilliant.
entendre.
It was a great idea.
A very cheap way of getting divorced.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant idea. Well, I mean.
Don't tell Mike.
Yeah. Well, I gotta get Laura if I.
The tricky thing about it, however, though, was timing. And I think the timing was not on our side because really, like right as you were saying,
Right as it was hitting, the whole world shut down.
including the courts. So
Right.
nobody could get divorced
Oh.
in 2020 and most of 2021 unless you
Interesting.
unless you could afford to hire a private judge. So you're back at the A list who are not using It's Over Easy. So
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a brilliant idea.
yeah, so we
really
produced a
was.
ton of content around that message of amicability and separating without scorching the earth on either side. That's another thing that I learned through that work, is that there's a lot of emotion involved in relationships and divorce, and so it takes a very mature person to see the value of not scorching the earth.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so that then
Because
opened
the only ones that win are the lawyers.
exactly.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it too many times with my friends and
Yeah.
some family, and
Yeah. It's not great, and it's not great for the kids. And
I mean, you know, my mom and dad divorced when I was 3, so I don't remember the process at all.
but you lived with the effects of it.
Live with the effects of it, but now it's like now I'm at the age where like I've had so many friends going through it. And it's so rare that I have a couple friends who are like, okay, split it up 50-50, that's it, let's move on, go, take care. It's
So
been
much
nice.
better.
But I
Call
think
me if
that's
you
the
need anything.
mature way of handling it.
Totally.
And the most cost-effective way of
Yeah.
handling it. Because
Yeah.
and then I have another friend dragged out for 3 years, spends almost $1 million in legal fees.
And,
wiped
you
out
can-
all of their cash.
You can use that money to get rid of the wrinkles in your forehead.
Yeah.
You know, for
many
worrying and being angry. Like
New wardrobe.
Yeah, put it in a place that
Yeah,
gonna
it's useful.
do you good. Yeah, 100%.
So, Johnny, what has been one of your favorite projects to work on?
Oh, the project that I'm doing now, I mean, project is not even the right word. I'm so grateful to have been invited into Warner Brothers last summer to produce brand integrations for a new talk show, the Jennifer Hudson Show, which just was
Oh.
renewed for a second season.
I know, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
awesome.
so
Yeah.
this is my, I live it and breathe it. It's a really interesting role for me after having such my hand, like your hands are deep into production.
Right.
Now I have a more executive position. I'm kind of a bridge between the advertising agencies and the different brands that are involved with the show and production.
So brand executive and show too, right?
Exactly. So I sit between the producers, like from the EPs all the way down to the PAs,
Right.
and then the chief marketing officers of insert brand here. And so I'm kind of like I manage those relationships.
So is it for like product placement during the actual show, or for commercials, or
It's
how is it?
within the show.
Jennifer Hudson comes out in like a Lululemon sweat, shirt, and you're like, look at my new Lululemon shirt.
I mean,
that kind of stuff.
Well, it's
More subtle.
yes. Just a little more subtle.
She's not.
He's a doctor.
She's not a fan of Lululemon.
Yes, in a sense, it's related to that, but it's been fascinating. So we just are at the tail end of our first season. We've produced 170 episodes.
Oh, wow.
Which is a
keep
lot
you
of
busy.
television. Yeah, and it's been.
And you don't also want to be a casting director at the same time? Why not? 2 jobs.
Yeah, but that's also my rearview mirror. I enjoyed casting. I enjoyed traveling the country and looking for people to do these different projects. But it also is a different time now. Reality television has changed from the social experiment to the formulaic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
What I love about talk, and actually, I'll just take you back. So
The show is fabulous.
it's such a cute.
She's so good
Yeah.
too.
And it's very modern. It's very, it's interesting because the demographic that we target is the current demographic. It's the Gen Z and the millennials, and that their taste is very, it's unique.
Right.
Just like we're Gen X, our taste is unique to,
Yes.
the other, right? So that's been quite interesting.
Yeah, and they're the future. You know, they're kind of changing programming, really,
Totally.
just like with social media and TV, and
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like I'm also an actress and writer, but
Yes.
it's funny. Like people, it's hard now because if you are an influencer, all of a sudden you can be an actor. You know, you can, and so. In a way, it's a little, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I'm like, go with the flow because life is changing, and the more you resist it, then you're stuck, you're pigeonholed in this like thing that is passing you by.
Elizabeth, that is exactly the point, and that's to your question about like, no, I'm not interested in being a casting director anymore. That's in the rearview mirror. You have to evolve and grow, and I still want to be, like I hear friends of ours or contemporaries of ours talking about retirement and, winding down. And I'm like,
I would love to. No.
Yeah, but there's no retirement in my future, and maybe not in either of yours either. So we're just gonna keep going, and you got to stay relevant and engaged.
Retirement. She just gave me a second job.
Right. You're now producing the show and hosting it. Yeah, exactly. There's no retirement.
Well, because you studied philosophy, I can totally relate to that, right? Because I was telling Dr. Brenner in the car, I'm like, my son, that's his major.
Okay.
So who was your favorite philosopher and why? Like what about that philosopher just really?
Yes. So my favorite, let's say, historical philosopher, or I would say is the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. Heraclitus was around, he's a pre-Socratic philosopher. So you know what that means.
What does that mean?
More than I ever knew about philosophy.
He was supposedly around before Socrates.
Oh,
so this is very early Greek history. And one of his theories is that everything is constantly in flux. Like nothing is ever solid. Everything is always moving and changing. And I wrote a paper about that in college in England, and that message has stayed with me because now, as adults, to say the least, we know that's true. Nothing is ever still. Everything is always moving. Everything, but
young adults.
Yes.
Yes.
39. So Heraclitus would be my favorite philosopher of all time, or one of the most profound, let's say.
And it's something you carry with you
to this day.
To this day.
Yeah, yeah. And then a modern philosopher who I've studied the writings of in my sort of current life is a Japanese Buddhist philosopher named Daisaku Ikeda, who again, he's prolific as a writer, actually, but he also talks about this change being a component of life, and this idea of cause and effect and cause and effect and cause and effect. So those messages are very similar. So I would say those are the two philosophers who've made the most profound impact.
Wow.
I loved philosophy. I was telling Elizabeth this morning. It was my very last semester at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to take a philosophy class, and it was I think it was philosophy it was a science-based philosophy class about philosophy of evolution, but it was fascinating. Yeah. In fact, the book that we read the whole semester is the only book that I kept from college.
Wow.
Called The Selfish Gene.
Okay. What was the premise?
It was all about it was about the philosophy of evolution.
I get it. Right. The selfish gene, because that's what makes us evolve, right?
Right. And so I was like, if I hadn't run out of credits to take, I probably would have done more. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to med school. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, my son loves it.
Yeah.
He started as a business major, and then he was like, it's too hard to get into schools where everybody's business majors. He did philosophy, and now it's his favorite thing.
It's amazing.
And he liked Greek philosophy, the Greek philosophers.
And I always said, what do you do with a degree in philosophy? Now I know.
Well, I mean,
a casting director and
well, no, I mean, philosophy helps you read people too in business. Sure. I really feel like my son takes philosophy because he says he really wants business at tech companies, but he's like, I'm learning how I can also speak to people to get the results
relate,
that you
yeah.
want. There's a lot. Philosophy can take you
Kind of like
many, many
communication
places.
major.
Yeah.
Plus, I would imagine in your role as a top, Beverly Hills plastic surgeon, that you have to have, I can imagine philosophy plays a role in the work you do, because I know, yes, you do some cosmetic things, but you also, work so diligently on healing people from the adverse
lots of
effects, of bad surgeries they've gotten from other doctors.
More psychology than philosophy, but I guess there's definitely a component of both.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh my God, you just got so deep, Johnny.
Oh my God.
Beyond the O.R.
Yes,
So.
exactly.
Well, this is not supposed to be a show about plastic surgery.
That's what I keep
You're like,
thinking.
now you're telling me. All right, so we're getting close to running out of time.
Yes.
You have.
Go ahead.
What?
I have more
Dogs.
questions for Johnny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. I thought
So can you tell our listeners?
scrap what I said.
Okay, yeah, we're not running out of time. This will be a special two-parter.
Yeah. I would like for you to, even though you're not in casting anymore, it's invaluable to have
Yes.
somebody like you to give you notes.
Oh, thank you.
So
Yeah.
what would you tell people that, whether it's actors or just
Real people.
real people,
Right.
when they want to audition for
Yes.
reality show, based that you've done a lot of reality casting, what are the gold nuggets that you can give them
Yes.
This was going to be my question.
to audition? Yeah.
See, you're rethinking The Bachelor, aren't you? Oh, but you're married now.
No,
So
no.
maybe something else we can find for you.
Daniel, kill me.
Yeah. No. I think that it's such an interesting question, Elizabeth and Dr. Brenner, because in that question,
Dr. Brenner.
well, you are a doctor. I mean,
I know, but you
in that question, you kind of sum up the world of how it's evolved from where it once was to where
Right.
it is now. When I started working in reality, it was such a new thing that it wasn't even called reality. It still hadn't formed, right?
Right.
And so the idea of
Survivor was the only show on, right?
Bachelor, Survivor, there were a few others that had basically all emerged around 2000, 2001, 2002. So that's kind of when the crux of it happened. And The Bachelor started as a real soap opera, which is how
Interesting.
So myself and other people that I worked with at General Hospital, the daytime drama, and other soaps were pulled from the soap world into reality very early, because there were a lot of the idea was a real soap opera. The
Right.
real world was another one.
So you were initially trying to cast soap actors?
No.
Kind of thing? Or no?
No,
Or
no,
just
no.
you were just
So-
trying to kind of mimic that role?
No,
with-
no. I'll give you the bullet point, very short version. So after journalism school, I had learned how to write.
Right.
So I always wanted to be, I wouldn't mind doing it now. But one of the things I wanted to do was become a writer.
Right.
So again, to make a long story short, I went to go intern at General Hospital for free, and got hired on, thankfully, after doing that, into the writing team
So you basically did go to medical school.
at General Hospital. Yes. And
Wow. So that was your first gig.
Yeah, my
So
first-
funny.
yeah.
We had Maurice Bernard on here last week.
Sonny
Yes.
Corinthos. He's
Yes,
incredible. An
he
incredible
is.
actor, an incredible humanitarian also.
Activist.
Yes.
Changing the stuff on mental health. and-
conversation about
yes,
mental health, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's
Podcast.
Stigmatizing them.
Yeah, he was, a young Sonny then. Now he's become the Luke Spencer of the show.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
But
And now you're talking with names that I just can't register. I'm not a soap opera.
Oh,
But you were General Hospital.
Luke and Laura, were on the cover of Time magazine. It
Hello?
was a huge
I'm not
thing.
saying that it's not a big thing.
He was
I'm
at med
just saying-
school.
Right. You were busy. But
Maybe I had a little days of our lives back in
Okay.
college.
Okay.
That was about
You
it.
were at
That's when we
CBS.
had VCRs.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it was a different world. So back to your question, it was such a
I
different
digress.
world.
I'm sorry.
No. There's a circle there because it like the idea of what are some pointers to get on a reality show or to be cast on, like that
Right.
was not even an idea in the early, like when I was working in reality, right? Then over time, as I moved through my career in reality, like that became more the thing, and we started looking for people that were able to deliver on camera. And that's really getting to the answer of your question. So for an actor, I really don't recommend trying to, go the reality route. I know that it can become for some people like a path or bridge into more traditional content, but I think that reality is best when it focuses on people who are genuinely, authentically, whatever that is.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
Wouldn't you get pigeonholed as a reality kind of person versus being
You could.
a
I mean,
scripted actor?
you certainly could.
Even though a lot of it's now scripted, right?
Right. I mean, well, it's structured, yeah. So there's a difference. There's totally a difference. But yeah, you're right. And I think also what I love about scripted work is that it's it's taking on a persona, or it's imagining, it's interpreting dialogue or being directed in a certain way. So a pointer for an actor that and again, my lane has been more in the unscripted space, but I've worked in the scripted space. What I would say to an actor is almost the same thing I'd say to a real person, is being authentic. So looking for the authentic resonance in the material, and then whether that's being an actor, portraying a role and absorbing the character in that way, or it's a show about a plastic surgeon and his practice and what goes on in that practice. Like, be authentic. Don't try to be something else. That's, I guess, one of the pointers I'd give.
And in the branding world that you're in, and now executive at Jennifer Hudson, what was the biggest switch for you that you had to maybe switch coming from casting and producing to now an executive?
Yes.
Like, how has that changed?
Do you have to wear a suit now?
I don't know. I have to wear a suit. I mean, that's the nice thing about being in LA and being at a studio. Like, it's still like you can dress like the lovely Elizabeth and like all black, and like as long as you own your look, you can pretty much get away with whatever you want.
I always picture executives in suits. Like I picture David coming.
David is a sharp dresser.
Well, he always has.
Yeah, he's a very sharp dresser.
But like he wears a suit every day, doesn't he?
A lot of the times, but
that's probably his personality.
David's one of the forefront. He's an executive at Telepictures, right?
Yeah, which is under Warner Brothers, so I see him quite a bit. But you had asked about
how is your job now different?
Oh, right,
as far as like, how was that change for you? How did that all meld into where you're at now? And it seems like you're thriving and you just absolutely love it. And I'm sure you loved all the jobs you've had.
Thank you.
But like you say, everything is an evolution. How has that evolved for you?
Most of my career, I've been an entrepreneur, even though as a producer, but I've had to like create my own companies. I've had to hire and expand and contract based on the projects, and so I have become like a one-man show, a one-man band,
right?
And having to edit, cast, produce, direct, shoot a podcast, record a podcast, do audio, like all of the things one has to become able to do.
Spinning many plates.
Yeah.
A jack of all trades.
Or Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Elizabeth does a lot of that too.
I know.
Yeah.
I can sense that.
Yeah.
And I guess in a lot of roles it's like that, but the difference now that I'm working within this big organization that's, has 100 years of history, making content, there are union rules and a job for this and a person who does that and a person who does this. And
that's so nice.
It's interesting. Like that's what you're asking. Like, what's the biggest change? Like getting used to that idea of like not doing everything yourself, or like.
Is that challenging? Because
It
that's
is.
kind of challenging for me.
Yeah.
Because I think there comes when you've produced and cast and all that, there's a certain control that you have.
Yes.
And I would assume that in this position that you are, that control is limited to exactly what you're doing.
Which is to manage relationships.
Right.
And so that requires a lot of like,
Philosophy.
and psychology,
Yes.
and personality, and all the things, so.
Well, and I'm sure personalities, that's like probably the hardest one because so many, you never know what you're going to get sometimes.
But again, like.
But for all of us, I mean,
all of us,
even for me, I mean, I was,
Sure.
I spent a lot of time learning medicine, learning surgery, doing residency, learning operations, knowing how to do it, how to manage patients from a medical standpoint. No one ever teaches you how to run a business, how to hire and fire employees, how to, interface with patients.
Right.
Both, when they're happy and when they're not happy.
Right.
So that's the hardest part of the job. It's not the technical portion of it.
But for you, in your role, there is also this life and death component to the work you do, which in the work I do, people think there's a life and death, but it's not the same.
My Jennifer Hudson.
Right, it's not the same. And so for you to be able to put people at ease and make them feel comfortable, like that's your superpower, I think, as a doctor.
Yeah.
Superpower.
You have a
I
superpower.
could be an X-Man.
There you go.
Oh.
So this was the question I was going to ask you, but I was a little jumped the gun, I guess.
Okay, all right.
So I always like to ask people, because
Yes.
I ask myself, if you weren't in entertainment, if you hadn't picked the trajectory of what you did,
Yes.
casting, podcasts,
Yes.
producing, what would you have done with your life? Or what would you have wanted to do with your life?
I've always wanted to be a lawyer.
Really?
I always thought that I would be, good at that.
What kind?
I don't know. I just
Like a litigator?
The thing is, the reason I say that is really not about the actual like job of a lawyer. The thing that is challenging when you are a creative, like artistic person who's good at, making content, is that the world of doing that is up and down. And the stability of being a doctor or being a lawyer or being whatever that just has like, a stable component to it has always been like a fantasy of mine, to have that kind of life. So I think that's what I would do. I would have done something like work at a bank or be a lawyer or, something that
Work at a bank?
I don't know, something that's like 9 to 5. Go to work Monday through Friday and it's year.
Holidays are off.
Right.
You're off on holidays.
Being a lawyer is not 9 to 5.
Well, for some it is. It's like 9 to 10 and then they're done. Like, ooh. When you get paid like $1,000 an hour.
I don't know anyone who does that. And then you go work out for the rest of the day.
Right. Yeah.
Or go to Air One and get
That's
a
the
smoothie.
thing in this town especially.
Well,
right.
Johnny,
Yes.
I want to say that of all the things that you've done, the thing that I'm most impressed with is that you can do a cartwheel in roller skates. And that is a true fact.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, it is.
I saw
It
you
is.
with your. I love
Still
roller
today?
skating.
Yeah, to this day.
Come on.
I mean, my last performance was a few years ago, but if push came to shove.
That's amazing.
I
I
love
didn't know
roller
that about
skating.
you. How did you find this out?
Oh, that's what a good producer
I know.
does.
She digs. That's amazing. This you're gonna have to show me. We won't air it.
Yeah, I
We
didn't
won't-
bring my skates.
We won't air it. But you're
I'll
gonna
bring mine.
You're gonna have to have Michael film you doing
Oh
this.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about it.
No.
It depends.
Maybe put it on Instagram. That's amazing. I did not know that. I see it now, and I'm like a baby giraffe if I was on roller
On skates. When was the last time you were on skates?
Probably in high school.
Okay, yeah, well.
And now I got too many injuries, like my back, my calf, my knee. I'm like an
should
old
get hip.
I'm an old my hip.
He's
yeah.
like Rosanna Danny.
Yeah. Roller
I've got
skating is
heartburn
it's
and-
great exercise, and it's easier than you.
It's
think.
great
Yeah,
exercise.
I love
I
it.
used to roller skate in the tennis court.
Okay.
Yeah,
the-
don't know how to play tennis, but
So the last and most important follow-up question to that is,
Yes.
inline skates or the
Quads.
old
come
school
on.
quads, the old school
the
quads.
real
Right.
roller skate
From the
Quads.
80s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
You're probably the same
The
pair that
same
you
pair
had.
from 8th grade, from Flippers down on Santa Monica and
Oh
La
my
Cienega.
God.
Well, Johnny,
Yes.
it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Always,
much.
I always love seeing you.
Likewise.
Elizabeth, I told Elizabeth, I said, we have to have Johnny on because he's just.
I'm honored.
I know, I
you're so
hunted
much
him
fun
down.
'cause I have so much fun talking to you every time I see you.
Thank you so much.
thank
It's
you for
great to
coming
hear.
on.
My pleasure.
I now know things that in 40 years I haven't been able to figure out.
Well, thank you for having me. It's
Thank you so
great
much.
conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate all your questions, and I'm wishing you guys lots of luck with this show.
And we won't direct anyone to your social media because you're behind the scenes. You don't want anyone to know
My
who you
social
are.
media is not
No,
exciting.
But I mean, do you want to? I say promote your social media. I'm all about promoting social media.
Sure.
So
Oh,
there's
wow.
your camera right there. Could you tell everybody where they can find you?
People can find me at Johnnie Raines Official on Instagram.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Thank you again.
Won't be
John.
too
Johnny.
exciting, but I'll be there.
That's nonsense. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching Beyond the O.R. with our guest, Johnnie Raines. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the O.R. with Dr. Brenner. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kevin Brenner MD and KevinBrennerMD.com.